And that's creating a resilient economy and finance systems. Because the old model of global value chains was depending on shipping and depending on being a consumer and producer, and where you're separating all, is unsustainable, and it creates local communities become vulnerable. If suddenly supply chains break down or there's things happening. So I think a program with research, development, learning, training around social entrepreneurship. How do you go from an individual to create a social enterprise that both is creating profits but also creating good in societies. Looking at the creative industries and looking at the underground, saying so what is happening in the underground, and how can you make a living based on your talents as a DJ, as a creative person. Going from looking at the manufacturing and the production processes. So one of the big trends in the world now is what I call social production, which means that you can tap into a global pool of intelligence. It might be fashion designers, and then have micro factories. For example, in Deyang, that can produce global brands locally. So instead of buying Prada or Gucci and getting shipped to the stores here, they're actually produced in Deyang in micro factories. So having social production in every single industry would create a more resilient economy, and being the center of excellence for that, not only creating the infrastructure, the policies and the practices in Deyang, but also being the center of excellence to coach and teach the world about it. Would be what I would like to do. It's a virtuous circle. I mean, once you remove the barrier between producer, consumer, for example, you become part of the system. All of everyone is part of the system, and then it becomes a learning mechanisms where the consumer is not just somebody who just buys, but he also learns about how things work, and suddenly he becomes empowered to be part of creating stuff, right? So that will change the power structures in the whole system, and more towards people, which means that everyone will be empowered to do something. So it is a social vision that's behind ethical economy, but it's also an empirical based economy, meaning that this is what is happening, this is where the world is going, and we have the golden opportunity now to make it a reality, because as I said in the speech, there are obviously forces that have vested interest in the existing system that will want to somehow fight this development. But if we can implement it quicker and accelerate this development, it will be the reality tomorrow.
Decision this morning by the mayor to create a Hanwan Forum is incredibly important, because it represents the first step of moving from Deyang as a disaster to a way of actually creating an influence on the world, bringing together all the experiences that were learnt during that very difficult time, and to start to share them with the rest of the world through firstly the forum, and then to create legs into training expertise, to bringing resources and emergency materials, many of which are produced in China anyway, and making them available to the rest of the world. I think it's the first step really in terms of an exchange of ideas from and centres of excellence and best practice around the world, where we can actually really operate as a global village, a global community, recognising the needs of humanity in difficult times, and also making sure that we avoid as many disasters as possible, because we face a period in the Earth's history where unfortunately many disasters and cataclysms, both natural and complex, are likely to happen in the next few years.
Yeah.
I think this is a time when we need to bring together different groups, the policymakers, the practitioners, and the academics. And that comes at national government level, it comes at regional level, and it becomes at local level. At national and international level, obviously NGOs play a part in trying to act as conduits for ideas and projects and management, and particularly through the United Nations that I represent through the Circle Mondial de Consensus for self-sustaining people, organisations and communities. We're trying to act as a conduit for exactly those ideas, and through demonstration projects prove that there's a better way. And at the voluntary organisations, there are Lions and Rotary and so forth, and many voluntary organisations and the Scouts and so on that work with people in business, in professions, young people. It's very important to try and energise these groups at the grassroots to affect change. We believe that there is a possible momentum for change, and if you create a movement from the grassroots and also from central government, national government and pan-national government, it's possible to really make a change in the world in the timescales that are needed. I think the first step is to physically create the Han Forum with a secretariat and a thought leadership team which actually brings together the latest thinking from around the world, and then to develop Han as a training centre where we can again crystallise that expertise that can be then transferred to other people, and also bring together the suppliers of emergency materials which are already in emergency boxes supplied around the world through the Rotary organisation, and finally to actually create demonstration projects to prove what can be done. I mean, clearly Rotarians have been operating in disasters for the last 100 years, but have never really told anybody what they did. It's now time to make that more public and bring Rotarians together through the Rotarian Disaster Agency to demonstrate to the world that we can work in partnership with all organisations, with all countries. Rotary is a non-political organisation, so we can work across geographic and political boundaries.
Oh, I think it's a wonderful decision, a courageous decision that he made and said, we are going to do this. I think that's a very wonderful presentation to us as a challenge to say, come on, let's do this together. And I'm very, very happy to do that. It's very exciting for me, and I hope to follow the journey over the years, and hope it's good for you and good for us. Yeah. I'm very impressed by what I saw when I went to the crisis area, as we did. And I think you've achieved a tremendous amount. You've achieved a lot very fast in the reconstruction. And I think you have something to teach us about the speed of your response. I think that we all will have different expertise from different perspectives of what could be done differently. So I'm sure when we get talking together, we will find some things that are very helpful for you and for us. And for example, I'm an advisor to the British military people, and they recognize, with the situation in the world getting a little more unstable environmentally, that the military are probably the best people when there is a crisis to take fast action, because they have the equipment, they have the trucks, and they can do that sort of thing. And so I just told them that I was coming on this project, and they said, oh, please, we would love to talk to some Chinese people because they have more experience than we do of crisis. And so if we can get the people at that level to have useful, productive discussions, I think it would be wonderful. And I will try to encourage that in future. And when we are talking about disaster, you have to make decisions fast to take action. And we are not good at that in England. And I think you are better at that than we are. So I think we have a lot to learn also. And I feel this very strongly, that women is also very, very important in the world of the future. I think men's behavior to this point have probably been necessary and productive. But I think men now are causing more problem than finding solutions. And I think I see increasingly a lot of wise women and a lot of hope for us to be able to have a more balance between male and female. And I'm very positive about the female influence in China. And I would particularly say the Chinese. I've been listening to the women speaking on the microphone here, and their strength of speaking is better than the English.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, my life has been in the area of engineering and innovation. And the last 10 years I've really focused on innovation which is a copy of nature, how nature works. Because only then can we make a sustainable society and a sustainable community. So my contribution can be seen in the context of rebuilding eco-villages, or an example here in Deyang, to use the best technologies that are around in the world, which are in building, in energy, in water, and so on. So this whole field we, as a foundation and as a company, have access to with scientists all over the world. And that's what I would like to contribute here, to bring totally new technologies which then can spread around the world. They can be manufactured here, which is a very good way of restructuring the industry. So that's what I would like to contribute here, and that's why I'm happy that we got to this conclusion this morning, which was very rapid conclusion, that there is an initiative that can embrace disaster relief, disaster prevention, as well as new technology development. So I'm also with you very happy. Yeah, I think from this day where we saw the commitment this morning of the mayor, I think there is a new time is born. So we should learn to work here in China, which many Western companies have already learned. And certainly the people that work with these new technologies, their focus is more to spread these technologies than to keep them to themselves. It's like an eco-village concept. You want to share it with the world without embedding economic borders. So we're much more flexible in terms of providing technology here, transferring the technology in a responsible way, and managing or consulting on the management as it goes into the world. So we really, I think, I saw the light this morning when this all happened, that I think, yes, it can be done. And we must trust. If the Chinese are willing to receive the new technologies, they could also be a bringer of new technologies to the world. So they could be a leader rather than, than lagging behind.
Manufacturer.
Yes, a leading manufacturer in the world. And they have the, the population base, the people to do it, the need to employ these people, etc., etc. So there is no better place to be able to do this than in China.